The broadcast is live.
Oh, we have a comment already. We got John C. out there right off the bat. And then we have Movie World Comics. I'll read some more of Death of Superman while I'm waiting. You know,
so that's a fast read.
I don't want to give. I don't want to give us. I love those stories, huh?
I think the only Death of Superman I ever read was the actual issue where he died. I don't think I ever read anything else.
Well, what's funny is that I love those stories where the title spoils the ending and nobody minds. You know, maybe it's the journey there.
Yeah.
That's why I always say Jaime Hernandez is just one of the best cartoonists out there, because only he could do a story called The Death of Speedy, and then I'm shocked when Speedy dies. I'd forgotten, because the story was so long. By the time Speedy died, I was like, "What? Speedy died?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's the name of the story."
Howdy, howdy. The broadcast is live. What's up?
Yeah.
And I remember I once picked up the Superman parody issue where Mr. Mxyzptlk dies. And I actually bought a newsstand copy here. We had newsstand copies of Marvel and DC up to 2003 or something. And I bought that one. And the death of Mxyzptlk, you know that guy.
Yeah.
Mxyzptlk. Yes. Yes.
Mixolydian. Yeah, that's it.
I just never mentioned him.
The fifth dimension imp.
Isn't it Mxyzptlk? Is that
Mxyzptlk? That came from the Super Friends show, just so they could do it. They just did that. And the Golden Age and the Bronze Age, Mxyzptlk, they have 1-2 letters.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Do you see the irony of who's talking about pronunciation here?
Yeah, and
it's fun.
Yeah.
I'm pointing it out, just
This is what happens when you read names and you study the letters, trying to figure it out. You really get into it sometimes. But there's actually a college professor, seriously, in the 60s. The stepdad of all things you just unbuckled a memory. The weirdest thing ever happened. I think I was like 8 or 9 years old. And the Super Friends run, and it had an episode with Mxyzptlk for the Super Friends show, right? And he came in there, and he was like, there was some stories of Clark Kent where he went to college, and he talked to a college professor in the comic book, and he told him how to say the name Mxyzptlk correctly. And I'm just sitting here like, what? You got to understand, the stepdad was from the decade where they had the drugs, but they missed out on the love. So I really don't know what he was talking about, but I believed him that there's these Superman comic books that was Clark Kent right before he went into college, from the 60s and early 70s. I never found them. I was like, but he just walked into the room while I was watching my Saturday morning cartoons and said that, and then faded back into the other end of the trailer. Wanted to let me know that college professors had gotten together to figure out how to say that name with Clark Kent. And now that I'm telling the story, I don't think he was trying to tell me it was in a comic book. I think he really thought it happened that day in real life.
Maybe it did.
Oh, man. I think mine in the comic spins of the day before the show, like, I'm going to get him this time. I think he's got a secret list somewhere.
He's got a list of quartets.
Yeah, he does. He's got this list of 4 different characters that are just assigned at random.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the Tin Man.
You're the Tin Man.
I'm Dorothy because clearly I'm the hottest.
I heard you were in the 90s, but yeah. I've heard
back when I was young, I could turn heads. Does
the term flying monkey mean anything to you?
Did you ever walk in with his friends in any bar, and one friend would unleash his mane from the ponytail, and all eyes would turn to them like a rock band walking through the bar?
With your flannel
they
shirt
had to go. Yeah. We're artists.
You know, Buddy Ebsen almost died from that makeup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And can you imagine going through your whole career going, I could have been in The Wizard of Oz, but the movie flopped when it came out, so that must have helped a little bit. I saw footage of him singing one of the songs that the Tin Man sang.
Oh.
So,
The Tin Man. Anybody ever have that Treasury edition from the 70s? The very first Marvel and DC co-production?
New
the
Wizard of
crossover
Oz
that John Buscema drew from memory, by the way.
Yeah.
He never
Wow.
referenced the movie. He just did it by memory.
Wow.
Yeah.
He has some memory.
I read it when I was a kid, no idea whose it was, but I never owned it. And I didn't really appreciate it at the time. You know what I mean? I wanted superheroes.
I don't think I've ever even seen it.
Yeah.
I mean, the ad was everywhere. I remember the ad, but I don't think I've ever even seen a copy of it.
I mean, to me, as a kid, Wizard of Oz was just a TV movie. It didn't feel anything special. It was older.
I was never a Wizard of Oz fan.
Yeah,
Well, most
I am
people
now.
don't realize there was a whole series of Wizard of Oz books, not just
Right. Yeah. As I got
And,
older.
T-shirt.
But
designer
I'm
named
pretty
Cavern
sure-
actually illustrated a whole bunch of Oz books, and they're actually pretty good.
Nice.
I'm pretty sure. I'm not 100% sure, but it's highly likely that the Wizard of Oz was the first comic strip that was adapted from a prior work around 1902, I think.
Yeah.
Wow. Nice.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't even know there was a Wizard of Oz comic strip.
There
I
were
don't think I've
two
ever seen it.
because L. Frank Baum had to divide the rights with the first with the illustrator to the first novel.
Uh-huh.
But they had a falling out, and the illustrator kept his rights. He couldn't use the name, but he could use the characters. So Baum had to use a different artist for the rest of the books, and he had to base the comic strip on those designs. Well, the designs from the original strip went with the artist, and he did his own. I used to know the name of those. I can't remember right now.
Yeah, I didn't even
Yeah,
realize there were any.
Illustrator of the Oz books, and I can't think of it. It's going to drive me crazy.
Those must have been some really early comic strips.
Yeah.
There were some other who like First Comics or someone did an adaptations of those books. I can't remember when. Maybe it was after that. Yeah, because there are more Oz adaptations. I know. So I think there was a series of them. I don't know, in the 80s, maybe.
I can't. This is one of those things. Like I said, I didn't really appreciate Wizard of Oz till like the 90s. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
When you started the books, they had a TV show about the author that John Ritter played the author, explaining where Oz came from in his life, or all the places he came from. And then I know that I think it was Marvel had this book, and Scotty Young, that penciler who does very cartoon work, he's got a bunch of fans. Apparently, I think he won that book, or he won awards for, I don't know if it was adapting other stories of Oz or if they were continuing the stories. Never picked those up either,
Yeah, I don't know. I've never picked up any Oz stuff now that I think of it, but I know it's out there.
Caliber did an Oz series.
Yeah.
What was that?
Caliber did an Oz series that lasted 20 issues.
Okay, Caliber. All right. Like I said, I know. I think it was First did one too.
Yeah.
So it's been I wonder why I've just never the Oz Wonderland War starring Captain Carrot. Oh, I have a vague memory of that too.
I'm missing one or two issues. That's actually is hard to find at a decent price and in good shape. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if it's Wonderland and the series, and they just came out with that mini series out of nowhere. I think it was 3 issues. I've never heard of this. Akiko and the Planet.
You never heard of Akiko?
I don't think so. I'll have to look it up.
Oh, I think I have heard
It
of that.
was an all ages title.
Right.
It's
I
out
remember
there.
the logo.
Yeah.
At the time, I was very, very curious about it. People used to say that Wizard drew in comics, but no, the Wizard always kept a space for this type of books if they had quality. And I remember hearing about it for the first time when I read Wizard back in '95 or '96 when it first came out. I saw the art from it, and this looks very good.
See, when I hear Shmoo, I think of a cartoon that it felt like for decades I was the only one that remembered from Saturday morning. the adventures, the new Smoo Adventures or something,
Right.
and it was just an armless white blob running
Yeah,
out the
you know where that
bunch
you know
of
where that
kids
comes
solving
from.
mysteries with.
Yeah, that came from a comic strip, right? The Shmoo was from what was it?
Okay.
Little Abner?
Yeah, it was from the Alcat.
Really? Out of Little
Shmoo
Abner?
Yeah, it's World War II era. Yeah.
Huh. I
Shmoo
never
was
knew that. I didn't.
basically the progenitor of Gloop and Gleep from the Herculoids.
I'm not saying I didn't ever. I'm not saying I never saw the
Yeah, the
resemblance.
Shmoo was
but
actually a pop. Today, it would be a pop culture phenomenon.
Well, let me tell you something. I would be talking Saturday morning cartoons. Saturday mornings were very serious, and I would try to tell them about the Shmoo, and it was like I felt like people made me feel like I was crazy. I'm like, I know they had me doubting. I saw it on TV and then I dreamed it. There, I was like, nobody remembered it. So thank God for the internet. I was like, it's real. I knew the Shmoo was real.
Yeah.
But oh man, there's something else I was going to bring up. It'll pop in there. It's the chaos show.
And Movie World Comics, I have not checked out Cosmic Comics yet.
Yeah. Oh, I know what I was going to say. In the 90s, before YouTube and all that stuff, the thing was going around where you get the Dark Side of the Moon and Oz, and you played them together.
That's right.
Yeah. And I dug it. I saw it. I mean, I was like, this cannot be a coincidence. And I've been doing that off and on since probably like about 96. I actually remember walking into a bar in town just to hang out, and I had bought Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd on CD, and I wasn't about to leave it in the parking lot. That's all I'm saying. So I was carrying it around, and you had guys at the bar just sitting there going, "Oh man, Dark Side of the Moon." You could just tell they were like going somewhere else, remembering listening to that record while they were on shrooms or something. I'm sure. I'm like, I was like the stereotype, man.
I wonder if you sync up a Yoko Ono album to the Close Encounters soundtrack. If you play them backwards, you discover which planet they all came from.
Yoko, I don't think anything by Yoko Ono is listenable forward or backwards. I'm just saying.
It's not. It's bad.
Oh man, Wizard of Oz talk. Way to go, Mind the Comics. This is your fault. Yeah. Okay. Well, Jared, I think we got books. Y'all want to look at some books?
I'll show off my first book of the week that I got. It's top of the pile here. This is one that was late. It was shorted at my shop, so it came out 2 weeks ago. And it's Dead End Kids #2. I guess you'd call this a crime comic. Slice of life crime. The first issue introduced us to our characters, who are just some regular high school kids. Then we got some regular high school kids, sort of drug dealers. And hold on, let me get rid of this.
While he's doing that, I'll be talking about this. I broke down. Oh, he's back.
I just threw it in the other room. But anyway, we got drug dealers here who lost a bag of money. And these 4, I guess they're high school kids, found it, and they're trying to figure out what to do with it. Meanwhile, the drug dealer is beating up all his people he sells drug to, and he's also a loan shark. All the people. So he's systematically trying to find his big bag of money. So it's a finding a big bag of money story, and those never, turn out well for the random person who finds the big bag of money. And the kids all have personal problems. The one girl's got a sick brother who's got hospital bills that can't be paid. Stuff like that's going on too. So they're giving them motivation to pick up that big bag of money. But I think it's only a mini, like a 4-issue mini. I figured I'd give it a try. I enjoyed the first issue. I'll give it the 4 issues. So.
Nice. All right. So I got this in the mail. I found this for 25% off. But I love these epic collections. All right.
Yeah.
This is volume 5. 1967 to 1969 of the Fantastic Four runs, what it's saying here. Issues 68 to 87, an annual, and some not brand X stories, which I actually own. But these Epic collections, I've determined I want to grab as much of the Kirby stuff as I can because, from what I understand, they go out of print, and and then they go up in value or selling wise, maybe not collectible wise, right? But going through this, I remembered a bunch of these stories. I mean, Kirby was all over the house with the stepdad and the uncle, but there's an issue I've never seen nor read, which blew my mind. Number 73, where they fight Spider-Man, Thor, and Daredevil. And Daredevil,
I remember that. I remember that cover. I don't know that I've ever read it.
Yeah, but these Epic collections. What's going on with my? Did I do something to my camera?
No, you just moved it so it changed focus. Yeah, you put the book in front of it.
But I mean, it's rich colors. It's just the straight comic. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think these are just fantastic. I think I got like 5 of these now. Not a Fantastic Four, but I found these from 75% off to 25% off playing around. But this Kirby stuff. They have a Captain America one that's come out where it's the story of him, the Red Skull, and the Cosmic Cube. Yeah. We'll try to get.
I have not read all those Stan Lee and Jack Kirby FFs. They were never a favorite of mine, so I never really tracked them down.
I thought I did in one form or another, but like I said, there's still apparently a few.
I would guess I've only read half to 2/3 of them.
Okay. Well, after finding that one issue I never even knew existed, I'm willing to say I've read 90% of them. But like I said, they were in the house when I was a kid. I mean, the actual comics and stuff. So I colored the first appearance of Warlock. It's a white cover with a cocoon on it, and it freaked me out where it was Kirby. So I got a crayon and I filled in all the white and stuff, trying to make something nice out of it. Yeah.
And now that Sleepy Reader's here, I got to ask him why he was pulling a howler mouse on his video. He couldn't say Keanu Reeves' name. What was that all about? He said Keanu wrong, but he couldn't get it out. I'm like, what's up?
It's funny. I went back and watched that one part, but I'm going to tell a sad story. I'm going to say a sad 2-3 sentences here. But when I was moving out of Roanoke and I was loading that U-Haul up by myself, and Roanoke's a city, 1 to 2 comic book boxes were stolen, and it was my Kirby stuff. My Hulk, my Incredible Hulks, my Kirby Fantastic Fours. I looked up; they didn't get my New Gotten the DC stuff. But yeah, I had a bunch of them. Not saying that any of them were mint. Let's get that out of the way.
Right. The next one I got is Birthright, number 47.
That's still going.
It's going up to 50, I think. I thought it was going up to 46, then 48, but it's going up to 50. And this whole thing is almost like a prologue now.
Yeah, it hasn't been around for like 6 or 7 years now.
Yeah, I think it came out in 2013 or 2014 was the first issue. And it was about this big magic war between Earth and this other planet. And the magic war was actually over in issue 45. And now they're just kind of wrapping things up because, Earth has kind of changed in that the planets can no longer reach each other, but our 2 main characters' parents are stuck on the other planet. The one kid who's like this barbarian who lived on the other planet for like 15 years, and his time moves differently on the 2 planets. So the younger brother is now like 22 or 24. He's this big barbarian guy. And the younger brother who stayed on Earth is like 10. But he just learned to use magic. So now the younger brother is trying to use his magic to get his parents back, and it's causing all sorts of problems. Plus, they're cleaning up all these magic monsters that were left. So it's an interesting little epilogue story to the main story, which was this one big war. So I find that kind of interesting because comics rarely do that. They rarely give you, another story arc after the main one ends to sort of wrap everything up.
Somebody found Birthright in the dollar box. Some of the ones in the 20s there. Okay.
Yeah.
But this one, Jerry.
Doing the Birthright.
Yeah.
Most people think that. I just don't. Being a child of the 70s, corny Stan Lee 60s writing didn't stick with me.
there's little things I remember, and it could be just be a little kid memory, but there's 2 issues back to back, and I think they're in this collection. But I remember this, but it was like the Thing gets cured from being the Thing into being grim. It was like that issue was called Monster No More. And then the very next issue, he becomes the Thing again, and it's Monster Forever. And I'm like, I see what they did there. I'm like,
They should just call it Ben Grimm's Fairy Tale.
All right, and I picked this up. Oh, go ahead.
But it's weird because as a kid, I used to think I didn't like Kirby's art because I didn't like the Fantastic Four. Then I started reading his Captain America from the 70s, and I liked it. And I was like, wow, I think it's Stan Lee's writing I didn't like, which was a huge realization for a 70s kid, because Stan Lee's writing was so hyped. Because he was the Walt Disney of Marvel. Everybody was supposed to love him.
Uh-huh.
So when I realized I didn't like his writing, that was like, whoa. I felt like, a heretic.
There's a lot of people that brag like, I like Jack Kirby right off the bat as soon as I saw him. I was the guy that was like, I'm the only one that can see through Stan Lee's hack writing. That's how it felt. I was like looking around like, I couldn't be the only one, Oh, man. Stan Lee. So these 2 books that I have here, these are the ones that I got like great deals on eBay. I actually found a seller that I don't know how he does it, but he continuously has brand new trades still wrapped up, brand new, and he starts them all at 99 cents. So I get this great deal on him, but something happened to where when he combined the shipping, he added a handling charge and a state tax. And I don't know if I got a good deal or not now, but hey. But anyway, from what I understand, these collections of this one that I'm about to show are like $50 a piece. And I got one collection at Ollie's, and I haven't opened it because they're worth $50. I don't know if I want to open or not. But so since I didn't open that one, I went ahead and got another one of the volume. But I got the Thunder Agents Volume 3. And the collected works. I think these are from DC.
Yeah, they're from DC. I've got those. They're good.
Yeah. Wally Wood, Dan Atkins, Chick Stone, George Tuska, Al Williamson. So I'll be opening this one. And it's already kind of open. They came in today. Let me show that. Yeah. They came in today, and I'm just so down with seeing this stuff. Dynamo. Yeah. And what's the other guy? Dr. Nobody? Was that his name?
What a
No
name.
Man, right?
It's great.
Yeah.
No Man, I think, is the robot guy.
Yeah. I need to, I'm going to bulk up on my Thunder Agent stuff. I bet you anything, I've only read probably like 10 issues of Thunder Agents in my entire, reading career.
Sleepy says, Birthright winding down reminds me that it feels like the second golden age of Image is winding down. I know what you mean with that, because like that, it was around 2012 when Saga came out that kind of jump started. That's when like all the big names from Marvel and DC started doing Image books, and other people too. And there was just this burst of creativity out of Image. That's kind of what I put at the start of it, even though Brubaker and Phillips were already there with Fatale and other people were doing stuff. Saga to me was kind of the start of Image. And I think that was 2013 of the second golden. But now it's like, it's just kind of, I still buy lots of Image books, but I don't buy lots of Image books too. It's a different thing. Everything's its own individual thing. Everything's, I bought a lot of Image books from people who I don't even know. Like Birthright's been around I barely even know who does this. Williamson and Bresson.
I'll tell you what, man. I remember a day that you couldn't say anything bad about Stan Lee without having people piling on you. And I'm glad the tide has finally turned a little bit, even if it's probably temporary. But, 30 years to appreciate Kirby. And Jared, it's just not your night.
I'm a heretic.
Here later,
I still know there are plenty of people who say something bad about Stan will pile on you.
Hating Stan Lee's writing is what really made me want to write comics. That's awesome. Good day, everyone. I think you're right, Sleeper Reader. It was 2013 when it began with Southern Bastards, Tokyo Ghost, Lazarus, And
Southern
those
Bastards
titles,
is a couple years later. So was the Tokyo Ghost. Lazarus was fairly. I think Lazarus may have been a year or two later, too. But Lazarus was probably in that first couple 3 years wave because, yeah, I used to try every Image #1. I used to.
It'd be funny if Lazarus just came back every 5 years like clockwork.
Here's something that I just remembered. Do you think Image is better when it focuses on a specific genre, or when it no, or when it focuses on all these disparate type of stories? Man? I'm not sure if they have this focus on quality that they like to think of.
I like the different stories, but there's really no distinction to Image Comics these days, I don't think. Which is okay. Meaning that, can you tell the difference between an Image comic, a Boom comic, a Scout comic, whatever else? I don't think I can, but I'm okay with it because I think those. What it is, I like comics that are about the people making them. Like, that's why I buy them a lot. But also, like, so many comics today, as has been said, seem to be pitches for movies and TV shows. I guess that's okay too, as long as they're good.
my thing with Image is I think it's better when everybody does their own thing. You know, even if anybody who's doing their book just do their own thing. Because whenever they try to work together and do some kind of big crossover, no matter how they do it or what they do, had they ever finished one? What about the Robert Kirkman story where he tried to get everybody together to do stuff? No, they never finish anything. You know, if they get together and work.
That's because, and the guys they were trying to do to get it all work were the guys who started Image in like '91, and they're not even. Most of them aren't even doing work anymore, so it's impossible.
Yeah. That's what kind of got me from Image. I still remember the late books, never knowing what was going on, and then anytime they would announce some anniversary or whatever, whatever. The last thing I remember is, I don't know if it was called Image United or something, but Robert Kirkman came in to write the story. They never finished it that I'm aware of. I think they were lucky to finish the Valiant and Image crossover books. Rob Liefeld got his out like a year later or something after it ended.
Yeah. I think that's what I just think they're focused on letting talent try new things. I don't think they're tapped out. I just think they're the same as to me. There's no difference between Image and Boom and every other small company out there who's kind of doing the same thing, as far as I can tell.
Yeah. I think we're ready for another. I don't know if I want to say renaissance, but something's bound to come along that kind of, like when punk hit rock and roll, man, it gave it a shot in the arm. You know what I mean? Even if it burned out, it still got people fired up.
Like last week, I was when I'm showing off my comic. There's like half the books I was buying were written by Matt Kint, but one was from Dark Horse, one was from Boom, one was from Bad Idea. So I think all these all these indie companies are kind of like Image now, more than Images like they used to be.
Well, yeah, so, I've got things to say, but I don't know what's real and what's not anymore with the way people talk. But supposedly, like Todd McFarlane, I mean, I've heard from people that they don't even have a submissions department. They might find you. They'll find you on Instagram. They'll find you if you're putting your art on DeviantArt. There's nowhere to really put your work out there, take your work to get a job. It sounds like in comics. I don't know, but I know they've been finding people online doing their own thing, and then they're like, "Hey, we found you out there. Come on over here."
And I think Image has also diversified their comics so much that there's a lot of them just not aimed at me anymore. Like in the Image Renaissance that we call it in like 2012, 2013, it was a lot of tried and true comics professionals going out on their own for the first time. But now all those that isn't true anymore, and it's just kind of like I can pick up tons of Image comics that I have no interest in, but because they're not aimed at me. They're at a younger audience. They're at just a different audience than me.
Not only that, but economically, these creators can probably get a better deal now putting out their own stuff through Kickstarter.
Yeah, they might be able to, but
Some
we
artists,
still get stuff.
some artists became a millionaire overnight. Made $2 million for digital art.
Jose
Oh,
Delbo.
you think that's there was one of those NTS files sold the other day, $69 million.
Yeah, I don't even know what that's about. So.
Well, the whole reason
file that you cannot sell or give to anybody else.
Yeah.
Ever.
Right.
Right. It's like a one owner, one shot.
It's another way for the rich to express themselves by buying stuff everybody else can't, and to launder money.
Well, the whole point of me bringing it up is that now we have reached the point where comics may have passed me up because it was something like that. That's what I'm trying to get at. I can't fathom that. I don't understand it. But yeah,
don't worry. You're not going to have to pay attention to it in the least. You don't have $100 million in the bank,
right?
And access to capital. But anyway,
damn sure somebody's trying to slab it right now.
Image is still doing stuff like that. That big Tony Daniels, Scott Snyder book that came out. But that's another thing that just doesn't interest me because, that may interest some of the Batman fans and stuff. But and I bought it and read it and it was okay. But that's sort of like I'll be getting the Gary Frank and Jeff Johns first issue too, just because I said they should be doing something other than. Before Watchmen, so I feel obligated to pick that up, and I will. It'll probably be good, but we'll see if I actually like it.
Well, you just made me remember something here. I mean, I got more books to show, but my thing is that I've been trying to track and pre-order Sandman and Lock and Key crossover that Joe Hill's writing. Right? Turns out it's coming out next month in the comic book shop and stuff that I order from and stuff. Didn't solicit it. Is there something going on with this, or is it just probably the shop just wasn't going to get it? I don't know.
Which one was that again?
Sandman and Lock and Key. It's a crossover. Joe Hill is actually writing it.
They probably didn't even notice that was on the order sheet because I think it's coming out from Lock and Key and not Vertigo.
They didn't have enough spandex, so they didn't care.
Yeah.
I don't know, man, but I've got to get that issue. So there might be a live show where I beg and plead.
I love Sandman. I love Neil Gaiman, but I could care less about a Lock and Key crossover.
Well, Joe Hill's writing it. If he can find Joe Hill, I actually kind of enjoy some of his writing.
It's just I'm not a fan of universe crossovers.
Here's another thing I picked up this week. Speaking of Image Comics, Homesick Pilots, which I like. I'm on issue 4, but the only reason I picked this up was the Casper Wingard art because I liked what he did with Kieran Gillen on that Peter Cannon book. So I'm like, you know what? I'll read another book by him. And I picked up the first issue and liked it, but I would have never picked this up probably otherwise. I mean, what is it about? Just looking at it, what is it about? Homesick Pilots. It's one of those, So once again, it's all these Image books exist in their own sort of marketing world.
Yeah.
So that's probably another reason why we think they're kind of over. There's no big push anymore. There's you can say buy Homesick Pilots, but it doesn't tie in with anything else but itself. It's a horror story, ghost story, superhero story about punk rockers and stuff.
See, it's wild. You say the title of that book, and it makes me think of that segment in the heavy metal movie in World War II where the plane crashed and they fight the zombies, the great zombie pilots. And,
it's their band name, but it makes me think of nothing. I mean, if Casper Wingard wasn't drawing this, I'd probably, with it.
Whenever you say Casper Wingard, I think Casper Weinberger for some reason.
Yeah. Scott, Sleepy Reader agrees with you.
Yeah,
but people buy crossovers. That's just it. I think that
people buy lots.
Crossovers are still some of the most popular sellers out there. It's that a quarter of the audience doesn't like crossovers, and they're vocal about it.
And people are still vulnerable to marketing lingo like The story that will change everything. That will change the Marvel universe forever.
People buying. People. I've always heard it said.
Yeah.
People want their comics to matter.
Yeah.
Well, my thing is one of the things with this, Lock and Key, I think is great. The show is awful. I
wasn't a fan of the show.
But then
they turned it into a WB drama.
And then before that, you had Neil Gaiman let people come in and write those 4 or 5 books from the Dreaming for Vertigo that he was overseeing, and that to me that finally blew the dew from the rose, if you will, the bloom from the rose and stuff, letting people get in there and just mess it up. So I'm thinking Joe Hill can, he's going to like blow those people away with just anything that he does. I think he could have Sandman crossing the stream just on a boat, standing there with maybe a raven flying by, and he's already beat all those people. I'm like, that's.
And speaking of Neil Gaiman, the 6th and last issue of Norse Mythology Volume 1 is out.
Cool.
Really good. This had some nice, what's her name? The animals. Jill Thompson art.
Oh.
She watercolor it?
Yeah. And it says that Craig Russell did the layouts on it, but it doesn't look like he did the layouts in this issue. They look like Jill Thompson layouts.
Do they have low horizons? He's big into having those low horizons.
Jill and Craig have worked a lot together over the years. So.
But it's good stuff. This was a story of an ogre who stole Thor's hammer. Good stuff. Enjoyed it thoroughly. Enjoyed the series. Nice art, nice writing. It'll be out in trade almost immediately. So if you like stories of Norse mythology, pick it up.
I'm trying to remember when this came out here.
And Sleepy, I don't know if there'll be a volume 2, but they've already named the trade volume 1. There's an ad for it in here, I think. So that's what makes me think there'll be a volume 2.
It's not like they're at a loss for source material.
Yeah.
Volume
They've got an ad here for Norse Mythology Volume 1, so I assume there's going to be some more. Yeah, this was a really good issue of Norse. It was just a good story about Thor and Loki and getting into trouble.
Cool.
Just so well done. The Jill Thompson art was beautiful. It read nicely.
It's so good.
And also, I'd like to. Craig Russell is so good at adapting Neil Gaiman. I don't really like Neil Gaiman.
Yeah.
But I like Craig Russell adapting Neil Gaiman.
You're over about 20 years.
Tonight's the night I'm trying to figure out how we're all friends. What's happening?
You've been missing out on this Neil Gaiman adaptation thing for about 20 years or so. No, he does have a good point. Craig is really good at adapting this stuff.
He's really good.
Yeah. I've got a bunch of his stuff signed. It was cool to meet him. I was just glad he was nice when I met him. I really hate to find out he was like, don't be that way. Just be nice. He was a really nice guy. So in the 2000s, we talk about the 90s. I still think 90s get a bad rap. So, where everybody says there wasn't too much good out there. I think
there was a lot of bad rap in the 90s. So.
Yeah, but I think the 2000s is the one where you kind of had to struggle to really find a lot of good stuff. I think, but it was there. It still was, But this was the beginning of a trilogy that I loved. There was like this little era where you had like Brad Meltzer came in, started writing comics. And he was roommates with Judd Winnick, who had been getting a lot of attention writing comics. He did the Red Hood and stuff, Barry Ween. Then you had Jeff Johns rising, who worked with Richard Donner and stuff. There's 3 or 4 writers there that had connections or were on the rise. And Brad Meltzer got a hold of bringing back the Justice League again. And then Jeff Johns had the Justice Society going on. They crossed them over, and they were bringing back the Legion of Superheroes to the present. The proper Legion of Superheroes, the one from the 80s. And they did this with the Lightning Saga. This is the hardback collection of the Justice League and Justice Society crossover. I have all these issues.
Did the company Hunter go out of his way to let you know this is Meltzer and Johns?
Yeah, they've done something, but and then like in little letters, which I'm happy about. They're like introduction by Patton Oswalt. And I kind of liked Patton Oswalt until I saw him talk about the 80s. He said people are nostalgic for a time that didn't really exist. And I'm like, you son of a bitch, I was there. It was time may be I'm like, time may be an illusion, but the 80s was real. I had the mullet. I was there, you know. But that was the first part of a trinity. So I got this in hardback finally. I have passed this thing up 2 or 3 times and regretted it. But I think I got this for like $3 or $4 off of that guy on eBay I was talking about. And I've got all the issues. Yeah.
I wonder if Johns and Meltzer's names still sell comics.
I don't know anymore.
At the time they clearly
no,
did.
Because everything's written by Matt Kent.
Well, not at DC.
But here's the second part of that trilogy. Everybody's wanting to know about it. I mean, this took years. It came across for years. But this was Gary Frank and Jeff Johns doing a Superman story with the Legion proper. And I tell you what, when the Legion of Substitute Heroes show up, this starts out in the Batcave in the year 3000. Okay, the Legion found the Batcave in the year 3000, whatever. But when the Legion of Superheroes show up, it's fantastic. They get a space bus to break into a place. It's fantastic. And then the third part is what I always try to throw everybody into. They want to try out the Legion. Get the Legion of Three Worlds miniseries by Jeff Johns and George Perez. Yeah. I still can't believe this is over 11 or 12 years old now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Time keeps marching on.
Yeah. But that's a great three stories to read. They're fantastic. So one of the best things DC did, I think, and it's not celebrated.
Gore Vidal just said, I said there was a little bit of scandal with his divorce, but I think it faded away quickly.
Have you? You know, I'm not going to speak bad of a lady, but I mean, it's Amanda. Never mind. I'm not going to do it.
I know everybody. There was a little bit of a scandal. Then everybody ended up turning on her, and it all went away.
Well, they're being nice to each other again. So
okay.
No.
I mean, it's their marriage, their divorce, and all that stuff. But really, who didn't see that coming? I mean, I was made aware of her.
Now, that was the only whiff of scandal I've ever heard about Gaiman.
Well, the first scandal I heard is where he was in New Zealand with her, and when the pandemic hit, you could tell he made up his mind he was not going to be quarantined with her. So he worked his way from New Zealand across America to England and then up to Scotland or something where he has his mansion or whatever he lives in. And then the government popped up about a day or two later going, don't do that again. Because there's supposed to be he wasn't supposed to do that, but he was not going to be stuck with her. So yeah, that was the first scandal, But I'm telling you, man,
really,
yeah. I'm not going to say it, but like I was made aware of his wife's work probably around 2016 or 17, and it was just a matter of time.
Well, he got a lot of flack early in his career just because his father was a Scientologist.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow.
And he was not a Scientologist at all, but he caught a lot of flack over it.
Well, my surprise book of the week, which Gore Vidal made a nice video about, is Carmen #1 by Julian March. With this very nice, his name just flew out of my head. This very Milo Manara cover. And I have to say, this Milo Manara cover is what made me buy this book. Because I knew this book was coming out. I wasn't putting it on my pull list. I liked the Julian. I've never read anything by Julian March. I know he does a lot of DC, or he did a lot of DC covers. And I remember they even had an art book of Julian March's DC covers that I almost got once just because I'm a sucker for books about comic book covers. The flying butt caught my eye. I was like, oh, look at that flying butt.
Well, it's funny now. Whenever Milo Manara does a cover, there's also going to be a Frank Cho parody of that artwork, making fun of the people making fun of the art.
But this was very, very thoughtful and poignant. And like I said, Gore Vidal did an excellent video on it, sort of bringing it back to Little Nemo and Slumberland and comparing it to Death, the High Cost of Living.
Oh,
and He even made me remember I had this book on my shelf. I'll have to show you this one later. Little Ego. I completely forgot I had that, and he showed it, and I went, "Huh? I think that's on my shelf." So I went and read that today too. But this just really—it's the story of. I think the tagline was a different kind of angel, and what was so thoughtful and touching about it is that the first like quarter of the book was you meet this little girl, and you see her grow up, and we see her through the eyes of some of her friends, and it's just sort of slice of life stuff. And then the angel, the woman in this skeleton suit, she looks like one of the Karate Kid Halloween costume guys. And she's very whimsical. Marsh did a lot of Batman interiors. Looks totally different than Carmen. There's some nudity in this too. Yeah, Carmen was a complete surprise. Me too. I like his artwork in Gotham, but he couldn't. Yeah, and it was completely whimsical with this this woman in this costume, and she like runs across. She's walking up the stairs of this apartment, and she sees this. I'll show you the costume. Whoop! There's a little death's head. There she is talking to the naked woman on the toilet, and she even talks to but there's a reason for that. There's even this little bit which you don't get till later, where she's walking up the stairs, and there's this old lady taking the garbage out, and she goes, listen, don't take the garbage out now. It's not time to take the garbage out. Go back into your apartment. So the old lady's like, all right, and turns back.
I just thought that's what happens when you don't take your cell phone to the bathroom and you snap a little bit.
But anyway, it turns out that this girl who we just spent a number of pages getting to know has committed suicide. And this is their angel of death, and it's very sort of thoughtful and whimsical. And this angel is kind of, we guess, it's just so, oh, look, you can fly now. You can do this. You can do that. And just kind of, we assume taking her to whatever the next world is. But it's also very Little Nemo and Slumberland with the layouts. Have you guys read Little Nemo and Slumberland?
Yeah, way back in there.
Where he's in this dream space. It's about him falling asleep and going to this dream space and having these wild dreams, and then waking up and going, "Oh my goodness, what a dream!" Well,
back when they numbered the panels so you could follow them,
right, 1904, but very, very much along those lines. A lot of imagination in it. Very thoughtful, very poignant. I don't know, what's going on with this book. The art is very pretty, nice light coloring, good stuff from top to. This was really a surprise. There's going to be 6 issues of nudity. Okay, well I'm there for all 6 issues.
Yeah, I was going to say you just piqued his interest. So.
I am very pro nudity. I'm an artist. So
speaking of nudity in comic books and stuff like that, Frank Thorne passed away. For people that didn't know it, 90 years old. I had no idea.
I did not realize he was 45 when he first drew Red Sonja.
Yeah.
He'd been drawing other stuff before then, but that's when he became a fan favorite.
Yeah. I think I'm trying to think. He did some adult comics. And then I have this Ribbit. Out of the blue, he did this 4-issue miniseries for Kamiko, where a magic spell is, I'm trying to remember, there's like a war going on, and a magic spell is placed on a frog, and it turns into Ribbit. A frog girl, green skin, but look, it's Red Sonja with green skin and green curly hair who rides a skateboard. It says Ribbit all the time and stuff, right? But Frank Thorne, Frank Thorne had already lived almost an entire life before he even got into comics. It looks like, he
was in comics in like 47. I think he got in comics.
He's been around for a while,
but no one really knew him. He didn't become a fan favorite until Red Sonja. That's when everyone went,
yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, and that's what he made his name.
Yeah. I think that's what I was kind of trying to say, but it didn't come out.
Yeah. But Little Ego, this is a lots of nudity in this one too. This is from, I think there's dates on it from 83 and 84, but it was published in the U.S. in 89, and Vittorio Giardino is the artist on this one. And as it says on the back, it's not quite pastiche, certainly not parody. Little Ego appropriates the look and feel of Winsor McKay's transcendent masterpiece, Little Nemo in Slumberland. So this is very much like Little Nemo in Slumberland, except it's full of nudity and sexual situations, and and it's got the same motif where this woman, all of a sudden she gets into these real sexual situations and dreamlike situations and loses her clothes, and then at the end, and they're like little 3 or 4 page strips. At the end, she like wakes up in bed, is like, oh, I'm gonna have to talk to my psychiatrist about this. That was weird. So it's very. It's really good stuff. It's funny, I had forgotten about this until Gore Vidal made the video, and he compared this. He was saying that, Carmen is along the same lines as Little Ego, all from sort of the fruit of Winsor McKay, Little Nemo and Slumberland.
If that
I'm going to go reread that, so I did.
Yeah. If that had been published by Image in the 90s, they would have called it Big Ego.
Yeah.
I knew I remember that thing. That thing came out in a Portuguese magazine because it's all a series of vignettes. So they were published in several issues of a magazine in 1989, and then they were collected in an album.
1989? Is that what you said?
That's when this came out. Catalan brought this out in the U.S. in '89 also, so they must have licensed it out there.
That from your description, that predates Alan Moore's Lost Girls, so. I'm going to have to track that down. Yeah.
Oh, the thing is,
it's only 48
there's a bunch
pages.
of Vittorio Giardino material in Portugal.
They mentioned one other. Oriental Gateway is the other Vittorio Giardino thing. I'm going to have to reread that. I think there's three graphic novels of it too. But that would be the only other thing I have of his.
Did you guys know that Mobius worked on an animated project for Little Nemo?
Nope.
Yep.
Actually, I think you and I talked about it before, didn't we?
I
think you and I talked about that.
He did some concept art for an animated series pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Mobius.
Sleepy Reader only recently appreciated the brilliance of Frank Thorne. Was too much of a Marvel zombie when I encountered Red Son. A Marvel superhero zombie, I'm guessing.
Well, tonight I have one hand tied behind my back with the show. I'm building a new shelf that I got to stack on the shelf over here. That they're the cube kinds, and I can't get to my shelves behind that to grab my Red Sonja, Frank Thorne, and stuff. I have a little Frank Thorne section up here, probably like that big,
They made early on. They made artist editions of Red Sonja by Frank Thorne. I never got them, but I always wanted to. But I'd like to see those.
I just can't believe he was 90. You know what I mean? Like it just blows my mind.
Yeah.
You keep on.
And the next thing I got, Eric Powell is back on the Goon, and is actually writing and drawing this issue, and it was just so good.
The diabolical Dr. Alloy is back. Yep.
And it's just, and he brings him. The creative way he brings them back is just. I'll show you another page. Hold on. Was just really, and he's just. He's just such a good storyteller.
Yeah.
Eric Powell. That this one issue had like more good story in it than 4 issues of your average comic.
Yes.
And all wrapped up by the end, kind of. But it was just like so I really appreciated this one a lot.
His Hillbilly and his Dark Horse Goon run.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get more stuff going on in those books than, you won't believe it's only been like, he's probably going to put up like 50 issues of both those,
I don't remember which issue of Hillbilly it is. It's one of the early ones, like number 4 or 5. There's just a scene.
The bear?
The bear. That's like a punch in the gut, man.
Make you cry. It'll make you cry.
Yeah.
And also, the last 4 issues were not done by Eric Powell of this, and which made me go, why am I buying this? Now, mind you, they weren't bad. They were actually pretty good comics. No. But this is just so head and shoulders above everything else that I was like, oh, now I know why I was saying, why am I buying this? Because Eric Powell is so much better than Eric. Like the last 4 issues were actually good. I'm not even telling you they were bad. The art was good, the storytelling, but Eric Powell's on another level.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mentioned this last week, but it's funny because I love Eric Powell's work, but he is doing this project with somebody else who's writing it. I don't remember who it is, about separating the reality of Ed Gein's life versus the what's built up to be. And I just have no interest in that subject whatsoever. Just none.
Right.
Eric Powell did an issue of Hillbilly that was in 3D, and he made the 3D a part of the story.
Right.
It was the most innovative thing I've seen. Like, it almost made you feel like this is the first person to do 3D comics.
Hillbilly
the
was
right
so
way.
good in general.
Yeah.
But mentioning
Hillbilly's-
Eric Powell, the Ed Gein, that reminds me of one of my favorite cartoonists of the last 20 years is Carla Speed McNeil. I think her Finder is head and shoulders above other stuff. And she did a few issues of looks like Eric Powell will be drawing stories for Alec Ross's Marvel. Okay. But she did a few, I forget what the Image comic was, but she had, but it was okay. But she had a writer working with her. And I'm like, Carla Speed McNeil is a better writer than this writer. So I kind of felt stupid reading this comic. But, the other writer had a bigger name. So I guess she was just like, Well, we'll listen to this.
Yeah, Corbett, I was working on shift. I might get when we're done here, I might try to get online and see if the online comic store has an issue of Carmen #1. But I think I've pre-ordered Crossover Volume 1 in trade because you talk about it. So I'm gonna give it a shot. 35% off because I'm a cheap bastard.
Right.
That's what I'm gonna change. This is no longer gonna be Howler Mouse. This is gonna be Cheap Bastard. That's gonna be my name.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah.
But the last comic I got for the week is Terry Moore's Serial.
I was wondering about
Always
this one.
good.
Oh, wait. That was not Jared. Everybody wait for the book. There we go. It's
Fun
Boy
cover.
George. Yeah, Boy George. On
There's
the cover.
our 10-year-old
It does look like Boy George.
Really a 1,000-year-old demon.
Oh, man.
And more Terry Moore. It's just always good. He
Show
really
the cover
started.
again. Show the cover again. See, Scott?
Yeah.
That's Boy George.
It's Boy George crossed with Raggedy Ann.
But he really has kind of brought the story. It's like after the first issue, because I know the story is 10 issues. It's about this character who's been working with a while, who I think first appeared in Rachel Rising as a 10-year-old girl, except she's really a 1,000-year-old demon in a 10-year-old girl's body or something like that. And she's kind of become a fan favorite due to her, crazy evil demon 10-year-old girlness. But she's part of the Terryverse. She decided to do a story on it, but I wasn't sure. Well, the story started out with this, like the first issue. Never enjoyed a comic. The story started out with this woman killing this guy who, she was the woman we turned out was pretending to be a 16-year-old girl. And this guy was trying to pressure her into fooling around with him. So we kind of see he was not the hero of the piece. But then we saw, this girl killed him, but we were still like, well, is she justified in killing him? Is he evil somehow? But then we find his wife called this little girl, who was a childhood friend of the 10-year-old, who's been 10 for the last. And then this woman also killed this little girl's friend. So turns out this woman is actually a serial killer. We think that's why it's named Serial. So this little 10-year-old girl demon's going to have to. Yeah, Serial never disappoints. Zoe is something. She's a cute psychopath. Exactly.
Apparently the book's going on the black market somewhere. They can't,
Yeah, Serial. I couldn't get the first issue. I had to get the second issue of Serial. But you can also buy them directly from Terry Moore.
Okay.
So if you go on his website, you can buy them. But I'm down with anything Terry Moore says.
Yeah.
Says anything he makes. So there's actually his YouTube show. Is speaking of him saying he's got a YouTube show that he puts on every week, and it's actually pretty boring. I gotta say, Terry Moore and his wife are a little dull. They make great comics. but their YouTube shows a little. I'm guessing it's better for newbies because he shows you how to do things.
I want to tell you, I'm going to back you on this. I'm just glad you're the one that said it. Yeah, I'm like, because as soon as you said that, I was like, just shut up, Tim. Just as soon as you said Terry Moore had a YouTube channel, I was like, don't do it. Don't do it. I remember him announcing it on Twitter saying, come check it out. And so I did.
And I did.
And I was like, I don't think I've been back.
And his wife is answering mail. Terry's sitting at his drawing board, usually working or talking to the audience. And his wife is answering mail and asking Terry questions to have him answer. And then he gives you a little demo. And they are so nice. You can just tell they're just so nice people. But they're just not that interesting as YouTubers.
Yeah. I met him twice at Baltimore, man. Nice guy, man.
Yeah,
and
what was just tell?
Oh, and who's the guy that does Dawn?
Joseph Michael Linsner.
Thank you. Yeah. What was so wild is you had the first time I met him, you had Terry Moore over here. You need to go look what Terry Moore looks like. And then you had Linsner right across from him. And they're both really nice people, but I don't think you appreciate the dichotomy of the roads of life until you had those two side by side. I was just like, this is why I love comics.
That reminds me of a story that Stan Sakai wrote about. He was really looking forward to meeting the guy that did 221 Baker Street, does BPRD. I can't think of his name.
Guy Davis?
Thank you, Guy Davis. And when we finally saw Guy Davis, Guy was, very punk at the time. He had a mohawk and, leather jacket with pins and everything through it. And Stan's like, that's Guy Davis. But they hit it off and they liked each other. It's just he just wrote about that dichotomy, like I couldn't look any less like Guy Davis than anybody else in the earth. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I did say on the show before that Ollie's told me to go ahead and just call before I come if I don't feel like coming out there. They'll let me know if a truck came in with some books.
I was going to tell the reader, he's asking if Tim's ever made a comic or a collection at full price. If Tim was a vampire, his name would be Discount Dracula.
Discount Dracula. I dig that. I'll take it. Have you watched?
I don't know what that means, but
David Finch. Yeah, it's David Finch does a show where he'll give you art lessons or he'll draw at the time and he'll talk and do stories. And he's got a really good following on his YouTube channel. But I know what Low Lefty's talking about here. I saw it once or twice, and I was just sort of like, "All right, Dave, I'm like,
Are we talking about Alien 3, David Finch?
No, David Finch. No, David Finch. I can't think of a book. He's got like a Mark Silvestre style, but it's his own thing. Moon Knight and Batman.
In the Darkness. I think it was his breakout comic was The Darkness.
Yeah. Nice guy. I mean, good stuff. Great artist, but yeah. He's had a few moments on his show that I apparently tuned in right at the right time, It's interesting. Yeah. That awkward silence now, like, poor guy, but we don't want to say it.
I find David Finch's art to be boring. For a guy who was part of worked for one of the Image Revolution guys, his work is very aesthetic. And I remember when he left Top Cow to move to Marvel and he worked on the Avengers. Then he moved, I think he did Batman.
Right.
And you're kind of expecting action, and David Finch is very, very stilted.
He puts a lot of lines and stuff. He's one of those guys.
It is. His artwork is good because it's detailed because it's got lots of lines.
Right. Not really my style, so I never got into it. Never got into it. The last thing I got, I didn't get it this week, but I read it finally. And I think Sleepy Readers got this one too. I remember him showing. And this is an example of how format makes such the difference. Holy cow. Adventure Man. What is this? Matt Fraction and the Dodsons. And this is the oversized hardcover album. And it's just, I actually bought the first issue of this and hated it. I mean, it was just a confused mess. I just didn't like it at all. And I was very disappointed because I like Terry Dodson and I like Matt Fraction's work. And but then I saw this was coming out. $25 is full price. I got it for Christmas. But I got off. But I was like, I remembered that Terry Dodson did Red One, which I bought.
Yeah.
I bought this first series of, and it was okay. I kind of enjoyed it. But then I saw Red One came out with a big edition like this, and I was like, you know what? Let me get that. It was like $20.
Yeah.
It's like, let me get that because I want to see Terry Dodson's art big. And holy cow, did it read so much better.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And this too, I'm like, why was I so confused reading that first issue? I don't even remember now because looking at this nice big artwork, it was all so clear and nothing confusing about it. And the story read fine. And it was just beautiful. I mean, I just really, really liked, and sometimes format makes all the difference. I guess this was drawn to be this size.
I've been preaching that for years.
Yeah. So
size is everything. It's amazing to me because I just realized when you hold up something like that, that format, I'm able to see you at 7 years old holding a comic book up.
Yeah.
This reminds me.
This reminds me, too, of reading Frank Miller's 300. I bought at least some of...
This is not your night, Jared.
I don't hate Stan Lee. Let me explain something. First of all, if I was growing up in the 60s, I would have loved Stan Lee. Because in context... Stan Lee's writing is so much better than writing at DC Comics like in the 60s. So don't get me wrong about that. But if you were to be growing up in the 70s and I was a Marvel kid, I loved Marvel. I read all of Marvel, Origin of Marvel Comics, this of Marvel Comics. I bought all of them. I loved the Stan Lee behind the scenes writing. But of course, it also made me realize he was lying to me, but that's a whole other story. But Stan Lee, I consider myself having started collecting comics really at 10 years old, 9 to 10 years old, 1976. So there was no new Stan Lee writing then until 1979. And when Stan Lee is coming back to comics, Stan Lee is writing She-Hulk #1. And here I am. How old was I in 79? I was 13. 13, 14. And I'm like, wow. And I had mostly, but not always, kind of bought into the Stan Lee hype, because how can you not? Marvel was all about the Stan Lee hype. And from 10 to 13, I bought it to some extent, maybe not wholeheartedly like others did. But I was kind of, stopping to buying into the Stan Lee hype because I had discovered Jack Kirby, Captain America by then, and I had kind of been disillusioned because Stan Lee in the back of those Marvel Origins comics would sometimes tell you he lied. He would sometimes straight up tell you that, I don't have a very good memory, and I tend to take credit for everything. He was telling you he lies right in there. So that kind of made me go, huh. But then there was so much hype surrounding Stan Lee coming back to write She-Hulk #1. I was actually excited for it as a 13, 14. I was like, yeah, Stan Lee's coming back, gonna write She-Hulk #1. Then I bought She-Hulk #1. That is a bad comic. If you've never read She-Hulk #1, that is a bad comic. Now imagine being 13 years old, being all excited about Stan Lee coming back to write some comics. The genius Stan Lee, who created everything, all of Marvel Comics.
I'm not convinced he actually wrote it. I have it. I'm not convinced he actually wrote it. I'm going to be honest with you. I think they might have just slammed some. Stan came in and said, hey, here's the story, and walked off, and somebody flipped it out.
You might be right, but all the hype said he wrote it.
Yeah,
to a 13-year-old, he wrote it, and it was not good. It was bad. So I was kind of like, that's when I kind of stopped. After that, it was like there's no more Stan Lee hype.
I read it after being translated, and even then, it's a story. It's got a beginning, middle, and end. And it's probably John Buscema's most boring work.
It was mediocre from the top to the bottom.
Ravage 2099. I'm just saying. Ravage 2099. Might have been one of the first comics that really pissed me off that didn't have Booster Gold show up in it. I'm just saying.
I think that may have actually been an improvement if he had. That's what I'm. That tells you something.
Oh my God, Stan Lee versus Booster Gold. I hate it when they do things to make me like cheer for Booster. You know, I'm like so.
You also have to understand. One of my neighbors, a friend who I grew up with, was a habitual liar. So I
reminded me of Stan, right?
Well, not that he reminded me of Stan, but growing up with him, I learned to pick out lies. I learned to be awake, to be aware, because people are going to lie to you. Like, and he would, so my friend would lie about things he didn't have to lie about. That's what makes. Just imagine Stan Lee creating Booster Gold.
Did he tell you dated Morgan Fairchild?
No, I don't imagine Stan Lee doing one of those Stan Lee imagines with Booster Gold. But I do imagine Stan Lee and Booster Gold meeting, and it's good, and they're gonna think of a scheme.
But I'll tell you the exact moment I was like, man, that Stan Lee lies a lot, is when I finally read the Galactus trilogy. Because, like I said, I loved those Origin of Marvel Comics books. Loved them. I loved reading Stan's behind-the-scenes stuff. Still do. Love reading that behind-the-scenes stuff. It's great. But like I said, early on, I picked up that, he might be not telling the whole story here. And I think it was in Origin of Marvel Comics that had the first appearance of the Silver Surfer in it. And he tells the story of him getting the pages back from Jack Kirby, and there's this little surfboard guy running around. And he's like, "Who's he, Jack?" And I was like, "Cool, nice story." I remember reading that, but in 1977, you couldn't read the Galactus trilogy, unless you had a back issue hookup, and I never did. But then I think same year, 1979, they came out with a Fireside collection of the Galactus trilogy that Stan Lee wrote the intro to in that. But he didn't tell the story in that intro. He told it in Origin of Marvel Comics. So I finally got to read the story, and my jaw dropped. Because there's no little Silver Surfer flying around in the background of these pages. He's the story.
I actually think the Silver Surfer series may have been the first step of exposing Stan Lee when he was doing
the bad writing on that. But either way, my little 13-year-old brain was going, how could the writer of the story not know what was in the story? Because his story of getting the pages back from Jack and there was this little silver guy flying around was not true. The whole beginning of the story was the little silver guy flying around. So that made me go, he's not telling the truth here.
Yeah, Justin noticed like in every single forward that Stan ever wrote, it's like, this is my favorite comic. It's like, boy, you have a hell of a lot of favorites, man.
This says it all. This used to be at the beginning of all my shows there for a while. Hi, I'm Jack Kirby. It says, hi, I'm Jack Kirby. Perhaps you've heard of me. I created Stan Lee. And that just says it all,
My point isn't to diminish Stan Lee, just to diminish the hype. I got nothing against Stan Lee.
Yeah, there's been times like he had some poetry he read in like this Kevin Smith interview DVD or something, and I had to say the poetry that he wrote was really well done. And I was like, and it was in his voice, so I didn't even think he might have, based it on somebody else's work. It was really good. And every now and then, like, he did a great job with like
his 60s writing.
Yeah, he did a great job writing like Fantastic Four. I don't know what it was, 120 to 124, where he brought back Galactus with John Buscema and introduced Airwalker and Gabriel. And so, I mean, I can sit here and say there's some great stories I read by Stan Lee that may actually have been by Stan Lee, but I don't know. You mix them up with Kirby and Ditko and stuff, and you know, if he doesn't have Buscema, Sturvey, Dick, you know, if he you get Ravage 2099 if he doesn't have somebody great to work with. That's what I'm trying to get at. You put
It's She-Hulk #1.
For you wrestling people, it's Dusty Rhodes. Dusty Rhodes would book himself with whatever wrestler was hot at the time, even when it didn't make sense, you know. And that's how I view Stan Lee. He knew who the star was, and he would.
So you're saying Stan Lee is the comics equivalent of Dusty Rhodes? It's interesting.
A little bit.
American Dream, Stan Lee, understand?
Yeah. Both great speakers, man, but what do they have? An atomic elbow. Think about that. You know,
Oh, God help me.
I read a story about Stan gave Buscema the Silver Surfer to do, and he knocked it out of the park. He brought his art for Stan to see it, and Stan says, that's not Kirby, and broke Buscema's heart.
Yeah.
Mm.
And Stan, you know, that's one of those things, too, that could have just been an off-the-cuff comment from Stan. Like, you know, he forgot about it a minute later. But to the artist, it's like,
Did you ever watch the? And they might still be on YouTube, but there was some VHS tapes that came out in the early '90s. Stan would bring in an artist, and then he would sit there and talk to him. And the older the artist was, the rougher Stan Lee was on him. When they would start working.
The funny one is the one he did with Harvey Kurtzman and Jack Davis, because Harvey just didn't cut him any slack at all. Harvey just cut him off the ass, man.
Yeah, he had Liefeld and I'm trying to think
Jim
of all of them.
Lee had Sergio Aragones.
Yeah.
Of course, Kurtzman remembered working for Stan in 1951.
I can see that. Yeah. But that's what I'm trying to get at. If you go, there's little things that, you know, have popped up, and it just sort of does what you're talking about. It kind of kills the hype. You see a little bit of the real Stan come out, not Stan the character who was in the offices doing great interviews while the real people were at home working, you know, and making those great stories. Stan is doing
I think Stan
needed. It made Marvel. Right. It was needed. You know.
I think Stan's a nice guy. Everybody, lots of people who met him like him. Lots of people, but he said he has a bad memory. He tends to take credit for everything, and that's a huge fault. You know, and we should point that Stan said that. I mean, I read that in those books as a kid. He's got a bad memory, and he tends to take credit for everything.
See, this is why I love.
When you're the one who did it.
Here's why I love the people that watch our show, man. They brought this up. The Silver Surfer, a 2-issue miniseries from Epic Comics that came out in the 80s, where Mobius worked with Stan, and they did a Silver Surfer Galactus story, heavy on the religious part of it, if you will, right? Yeah. And that thing still gets reprinted every now and then, or a hardback, or remembered. But I'm telling you, nobody really. I have not met anybody that can tell me the plot, but they can talk all day long about Mobius's art. You follow me? I think that sells because of Mobius. That's why it's
just how much of a titan Mobius was.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Ah, yeah.
He probably did think it was 1951 and was like, "This is gonna go different there, Stan." You know, good for him.
I can tell you a secondhand story of Stan Lee writing something in the 90s where he called up one of the editors because he wanted to write something. And so, of course, the editor was like, "Sure, let's write something." And then Stan Lee, then the deadline came and went, and the editor said, "Stan, what's going on? You're going to write something?" It's like, have someone write me up a plot. So the writer hired someone to write up a plot, wrote up a plot, sent it to Stan. Stan's like, "Well, don't send me the plot, send me the pencils." So they had to hire someone to pencil it from the other plot and sent that to Stan, and Stan scripted it. That's what that was writing to Stan, scripting something.
Yeah, I have no doubt that like Stan kind of steered the boat, if you get what I'm saying.
Right.
You know, it's the taking the credit for things he didn't do that bothers me, you know.
Right. That's his flaw as a human being.
I mean, and over the years, you know, you hear people talk about there's like missing artwork from the Silver Age of Marvel and artists saying they didn't get their stuff back. And then I've seen people like on these auction shows and antique shows or something, if you want to believe those, where they'll talk about Stan supposedly had a whole separate little, I don't know, garden shack or something that they predicted when he passed away, somebody gets in there, they're going to find all that missing art, original art. And my mind was like, yeah, because it has like, he doesn't want to go through and erase all the little notes and dialogue that Kirby and Ditko and all them wrote themselves, proving it. You know what I mean? That's where my mind went, Yeah, the redeemable attributes of Stan Lee. I mean, like I said, he was a character. He had his pulse on he had his hand on the pulse of the 60s when it come to the college kids. He knew how to talk to them, made them feel like they were part of Marvel. I mean, there's a lot of things he did, but it was not the creative part,
Stan was a sale.
Yeah. And that voice, I mean, Excelsior. I mean, when you're a kid watching Saturday morning Amazing Spider-Man cartoons and the Hulk cartoons, and Stan's narrating them at the beginning, I mean, that's a great effect. So Stan Lee does not get a lot of favorable bios. Comic book historians have a few videos that do not pay a good view of him entirely. Him and Bob Kane will break your heart. Yeah.
No, I think Stan Lee was, like I said, it was Martin Goodman who really did the bad stuff to Kirby in terms of money. Like I said, I think Stan Lee people generally like him and generally like working with him, but I think he was so busy fighting for his share of the pie, which was really hard to get in those days, that it didn't bother him to take other people's share along with him, kind of thing. So like it's not like Stan was living high on the hog up until the 70s or so, and he had to fight hard to make sure he got money from Marvel, to be Stan Lee. But he got paid to be Stan Lee starting in the 70s, and that everybody else didn't get that was not his problem. It was kind of like, I think he was so busy fighting hard for himself that he didn't see the collateral. I don't know how much he cared about the collateral damage he did. But he cared about people in genuinely, I think.
You make an excellent point that, people can argue till they're blue in the face about who created what, who wrote what, how much did Stan do, how much did Jack do. They lose the point of Stan could have done better for his fellow creators.
Right.
He chose not to multiple times.
Yeah.
Right.
I disagree completely.
But I think
do you know what would have happened if in 1964 Stan Lee would have got to Martin Goodman? Hey Martin, I think we can make more money if we pay Jack Kirby more per page. What do you think would have happened?
Well, it's not 1960.
Stan Lee would have been fired on the spot.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Because Martin Goodman once fired his own brother, so we would fire Stan Lee.
It's not that kind of stuff that I'm talking about. It's it's mostly like Stan Lee got his money for credit, basically. You're right. Stan Lee could not get more money for. It was Martin Goodman who didn't give Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby the royalties that he promised them. That was not Stan Lee. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how Stan Lee had to battle for his money. He had to battle for credit. He had to battle for being important. When they sold it to when Goodman sold the company to Kinney, Stan Lee had to battle to get in on the deal so that he would be carried over with Kinney in order to, keep his job and keep money. And Stan Lee always did his best to battle for himself to get money and credit. He could have battled for credit for the other guys, but he wasn't really into that. And I don't know how many human beings would be.
Well, okay,
You'd
wait a
have
minute.
to be a real hero, a real mensch to do that. And I don't think Stan was that type of hero. And I don't know how many.
There's no business motive there's no business reason to do that. Ditko was long gone by then, and Kirby had just left. And they were in the process of selling. They were not going to be able to. Martin Goodman would not have been able to sell anything if he said, "By the way, the other guys that created this, they're no longer with the company. No company is going to buy a universe of properties if they're going to have to keep paying royalties in perpetuity to people that are no longer associated with it."
Yes,
Okay.
but you can go. What do you got?
No, I'll say it after. Go ahead, and I'll
Okay.
I'll
I
come
was just
back
saying
after
that
it.
you're right about that. That's why Martin Goodman was the one. But as you can see from that, Martin Goodman knew the value of those guys, but he let them go anyway because he wanted to sell it. He knew the value of them, so he had he knew the value of the creators. So now, since he wanted to sell it, he had a gin up value of Stan Lee. And Stan, of course, was perfectly willing to go along with it because he's been fighting for his value all along. I'm just saying if Stan Lee were, I don't know who he would be. If he were a person who, if Stan Lee were one of the Image guys in the early 60s and said, we all got to stick together with our value, we can all leave or we can all stay together, they would have gotten money. But that's not, it was 1961, 1962, and that didn't happen. But I'm saying that's a fault in Stan Lee, but it's kind of a fault in all of us. I don't know how many people would be able to fight for their own worth and that of their compatriots, but some do.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad I waited to say what I was about to say, man. But like the difference between Robinson or Bill Finger and Bob Kane, the whole Batman fiasco with them. Bill Finger finally got credit, right? Mm-hmm. Well, Bob Kane went pretty much to the grave saying he created Batman, but everybody knew different. Then you have Stan Lee, and it's almost like there's a different set of rules because he had a persona and was charming. He was on searching for Steve Ditko, right? It's not 1964 like Paolo was saying. Stan Lee's elderly, not even really at Marvel at all. No Martin Goodman around. Nobody. He's untouchable. And he gets pissed off because they pressure him to where he finally admits Steve Ditko created Spider-Man. And he went, see what you made me say? And he got all mad and stuff. But that was the real Stan Lee coming out.
He said
no difference between Bob Kane and Steve Ditko.
He said different things under oath than he said in interviews, too. He wouldn't say that under oath. During the,
Yeah. Do they pressure him? But I mean, Bob Kane, Stan Lee, same thing. It's the same thing, but Stan Lee somehow gets a pass with a lot of stuff, you know.
Well, I think Sequential Geek says, what about Stan Lee's head instinct? Didn't he have Ditko? Yeah, we're not saying Stan Lee didn't contribute. It wasn't good. Like, I'm not a fan of Stan Lee's writing, but that's because I grew up in the 70s. If I grew up in the 60s, I'd be a fan of Stan Lee's writing because it was better than all the writing about it. I'm saying Stan Lee's failings were as a human being, but we all kind of have those failings. I just don't buy into the Stan Lee hype. Yeah, like, I don't know. It's a tough. First of all, Stan Lee's he's always been a company guy. He worked for Martin Goodman, his one company, his whole career. He was always the company guy. So to expect him to stand up for the freelancers is really asking too much of him. But morally, he should have stood up to for the freelancers.
Yeah.
But even the freelancers at the time would not stand up for themselves. I have a book right there talking about the history of comics. And they're talking about the several attempts that they had to organize the artists into doing a union.
Right. Some did, some didn't. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but you try to do a union of comic book artists, and it's like herding cats. And there was an attempt where what was the guy's name? One of the guys who was famous in the 50s for drawing horror, Bernie Krigstein.
Right.
Bernie Krigstein was trying to organize the people, and it was Mike Esposito who told on him to all the publishers. Right. Krigstein was unable to get any work for a few years. Esposito had Ian Ross Andrew at a studio, and they were producing a fuck ton of volume for all the publishers.
Okay. I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about like one person sometimes it's one person in a position of power that can change things. And Stan could have, but
And Stan Lee didn't have a crystal ball. We're not talking about expecting him to be a visionary to change everything like Neil Adams tried to. You follow me?
Right.
So
right.
I mean, I'm not saying he should.
Stan Lee is clearly known Neil Adams.
Yeah, I'm not faulting him for not having that vision. My fault is that it's like you said, he's had plenty of opportunities to make it right what happened over the years.
Later on, like when Kirby's the family tried to get what they thought was Stan later on in life had pull, and
well, that's when under oath in those federal lawsuits, Stan Lee said he created everything.
Yeah, I mean, later on in life, he had the pull to have some, weight, in that argument, and again chose not to.
Right, yeah. Bob Kane, Stan Lee, same situation.
Yeah, Sequential Geek says Kirby screwed up too, not as much as Stan. Kirby screwed up when he went against Joe Simon in the Captain America lawsuit, but that's because once again he was being a company man. He was working for Marvel Comics. Goodman has made him some promises that he never held up. So Kirby testified against Joe Simon, which he shouldn't have done.
Let me get some comments in here. They're talking about Stan making a lot of people happy during the years. Those were expensive. I've heard $75 and stuff, but I'm kind of wondering if towards the end there it wasn't elder abuse the way they were marching.
Stan was beloved, and he was perfectly. He brought a lot of happiness to people.
I don't know if I can't remember. Jared, you might know more about this or something like that, but didn't he just hand things off to John Romita to finish off? I mean, they did it to Steranko.
He was hands-on. He changed things, but I don't. Who knows if those changes were good or bad? But like I don't doubt Stan Lee's. I don't doubt Stan Lee contributed, and I don't doubt Stan Lee's talent. I just doubt that I just think he says he takes credit for everything that he didn't. He says in those books that he takes credit for things he didn't do, and he did. That's what I'm saying. And he shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, and this right here, this comment here specifically about redoing pages and stuff, is that just part of the business sometimes?
Yeah, but that really is part of being the boss at a comic book. So I like I said, I've told this story before. I discovered this. All the Batman stuff was credited to Bob Kane. The Joker, he didn't create it. He maintained the illusion.
Everything. Yeah,
the giant pin.
Part of being the editor-in-chief and having the last word is being a little whimsical. I don't think this will work. Let's change it, because it's just this weird mindset. Because it's based on nothing. You're just going by your instinct because there's nothing else to go by. I've seen it so many times where especially the editor-in-chief wants things changed because he just gets a whim where he says, "No, this isn't going to work." I assume Stan did that too, because like I said, I saw it at Marvel when I was there. It's just part of the job. You're trying to make decisions based on almost nothing. Do you think this page is going to be better than this page? It's really based on your taste at the moment.
All right, now I know this is just supposed to be a joke, but wasn't Stanley one of the first people to get hair plugs for real? Early 70s, he got hair plugs.
Yeah, I remember reading that.
Shatner had them long before that. There was actually there's a book that goes into some really detailed history about Star Trek, and in the budget sheets they had tracked how much each missing toupee cost. They noticed that there were some 3 or 4 toupees missing at the end of season 2. And Herb Justman or one of the other producers put out a memo. It was like, does anybody know where these went?
Nice.
Everybody knew where they went.
That's hilarious. And you know what? The older I get, the more I understand taking the toupee. Maybe at least thinking about it. I don't know. I don't want to judge. Still instilling, but I'm sure.
One thing that I love about
for either one of them. So
one thing that I love about Star Trek is how Kirk has more hair in the motion picture than he does in the original series.
I noticed in Wrath of Khan probably because I was like 9 or 10 and getting a little bit more aware, you know what I mean? But I remember going, they put a wig, they gave him a perm. I was trying to figure out if it was a perm or a wig, but I remember just staring at that like that's different, Well, we're at the hour we've gone over an hour and a half. I got to wind it up to here in a little bit, but we got 15 people here. I wish I'd just butted in when we had almost 20. I mean, that was a good thing, but maybe we'll talk about it more next week too. But the fanzine you mentioned last week when it was on your channel, Jared, we're doing a fanzine, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What do you want to say about that? You've already sent out the PDF file. There's been a little piece here and there.
Mm-hmm. Well, the PDF file is just a dummy book, just for us to look at the design.
Well, the design is practical enough, which is good just to get it wrapped up. Especially because we're not going to go with a very heavy graphic line.
Right. I wanted it to look sort of like an old fanzine.
Yeah. So that's why I mentioned Jerry Bales.
Yeah. So I kept everything simple, threw some pictures in, some headlines.
The sad thing is most people who, other than you and I and Jared, don't know who Jerry Bales is.
If it wasn't for Jerry Bales, nobody would be a comic book geek.
I think I have a ghost. I think my ghost is back. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
I hope it's not Patrick Swayze.
Put Sequential Geeks last comment up. I'll address that.
The one that says we got Stan?
Yeah.
Okay.
First of all, I don't like Stan Lee's writing, but that doesn't mean it sucks. And in context, I think his writing in the 60s was good. But if you grew up in the 70s, you're not going to like 60s writing. Editorial duties. I think Stan Lee's greatest contribution to comics was deciding he wanted to make comics for smart 15-year-olds. I think that's, and all his hype, I think that's part's real. And I think that was important because he's probably not the only one who wanted to do that, but he was the only one who could. Because no one at DC could do that because they couldn't get approval from their bosses. Stan Lee, all he had to do was convince Martin Goodman, who wasn't looking at anything but sales, so he probably didn't even have to convince him. So him deciding he wanted to make comics for smart 15-year-olds and thus moving that, because of the comics code, comics were infantilized. They were mated for dumb children. For that's what we thought comics were for, and that's all we could make them for was dumb children. And Stan Lee said, I'm kind of tired of that. I want to make them for smart 15-year-olds. And that made that brought comics a little bit out of the comics code, and that was the first step to getting comics as they are today for all different age audiences rather than just for kids. And I think Stan he may have been the only one in the comics industry who could have done that, and he did it. So that's to me, that's his biggest credit in comics is doing that, is saying I want smarter comics, even if it's just for smart 15-year-olds. And of course, he started to write them for college kids after a while too.
Nice. Yeah, it's pretty good. Well, guys, I got to wind this up. I have been up since 2:30 last night. And I'm having all kinds of thoughts in my head and they're just not making it to my mouth, and I'm like, yeah, that's all I can get out. Yeah.
We need a sound effects board so you can just press a button and just say, yeah, on command.
We used to have something that could do that back in the day, and it went away. I mean, Google Hangouts, the Google Hangouts used to be really cool. You had applause, you had crickets, you had drums, snare drum, bump, pump, had all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Better the 60s. Better that 60s Marvel had Stan Lee than Mort Weisinger. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And one thing is for sure, if it wasn't for Stan Lee, the hype man, comics would have died down during the 1960s in the United States.
Yeah.
There's contributions that Stan Lee made that were visionary, which is cool, you know what I mean? But there's a little bit there on the other side of it where he made some really bad choices that we've discussed tonight. And that's probably one of the things why Stan Lee's always going to be a name in comics, because he revolutionized them for all the reasons that Jared talked about, all the things we've said. But I think there's just a lot of other people who were, it may have been Stan Lee being the person to, make that big decision like Jared was talking about, but he couldn't have pulled it off without the people coming in and creating those characters and making those stories that 60 years out, people still talk about more than comics from the last 10 years. Honestly.
Yeah. And like I said, obviously, that idea of making comics for smart 15-year-olds was an idea that was out there because all these guys had done it before. But he seemed to be the only one in a position of power. It was because he worked for a small company. He was the editor. He was the writer.
And
he was the everything.
And supposedly he was ready to walk away, try to find something else to do. And it was his wife who said, well, if you're going to quit anyway, do it your way.
I don't believe that part of the story.
Okay.
Only because he was such a company man, there was no way he was going to walk away. But for whatever reason, he decided to do that. He decided that was a good idea. And, someone may have even said it to him. Let's pretend it was Jack Kirby who came up and said, let's do some comics for smart teen 15-year-olds. Doesn't matter who said it, who originated the idea. He was the only one in all of comics, I think, who could have made that decision and pulled it off. Yeah. Because people could have been saying that to him for 5 years. And if he didn't say yes, it didn't get done.
For all we know, Kirby just said, you know what? I want to do the Challengers of the Unknown the way I've always envisioned them. We'll call them the Fantastic Four.
Who knows?
Plus, he was the first one to kind of pitch a sense of inclusiveness to the readers.
Yeah.
Well, he made the reader feel like they were in this together.
Yeah,
when he talked to them, and that's one of the things Marvel has killed reputation-wise. That was built over decades, and they've just lost that. That was one of the magic things about Marvel. Mark Grunwald doing the No Prize, Stan Lee talking to you in editorials, stuff like giving everybody nicknames. Did Stan Lee, was he the one that made the decision to put the actual people doing the book in the credits? You follow me? I'm not saying
I think they had credits before, but I think they were the first ones to.
Yeah, because what they had was signatures, and the artists always made sure that their signature was somewhere in the art. If they weren't reminded to also put the writer, you didn't know who wrote what. Stan was the first one to put it. Made by Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Dick Ayers, and the letterer guy. Right. And they always forgot poor Sam Goldberg.
Yeah. There was no coloring credit in there for years.
Until 1973, I think.
Yeah, but was that long? Wow. Yeah. Wow.
I hope I'm reading this the way I think I'm reading it. Stan Lee was a great cheerleader for the comics medium, and here in Texas, we appreciate cheerleaders. All right. If Marvel had failed, Stan Lee would have been out of comics and into some magazine work, while Kirby would have just crossed the street to work for Dell or Harvey or somebody.
No, he wouldn't.
People don't realize how close Marvel was to going out of business if they hadn't got that deal to do Star Wars comics.
Yeah.
But people also don't realize that Kirby really had nowhere else to go. Marvel was the second worst payer in the industry at the time. And the other guys did not want to work with Kirby. He was briefly at Archie with the Prophet Strong, the Shield reimagining, and he didn't stay that long. Mm-hmm. The only other chance was to go to Charlton, and Charlton paid peanuts. Dell was not going to hire him. You can forget that. Dell was even more conservative than DC.
Well, didn't he just finish a lawsuit with DC? That's why they wouldn't hire him.
Yeah, because with the editor, his editor on the Challengers, because he promised Kirby promised him money from the comic strip if he was his agent, and he didn't pay.
See, a lot of things were going on even in the 40s where Jack Kirby and Simon rejuvenated the Sandman, and he got caught. They figured out it was him, and Stan Lee actually fired Kirby like in 1942 or something. Right?
Oh no, they got fired for
claimed it was
Captain America.
They claimed Stan Lee ratted them out.
No, they were shadow working at the competition and got caught. That did happen. Yeah, over the Sandman.
That may be true, but they were fine when They
probably
found
got
out,
fired many times. Yeah.
right. They found out that they were I guess Martin Goodman owned it then too, was running all of the company's expenses through Captain America. Because they were
Yeah.
supposed to be getting royalties on Captain America. But all of Timely's expenses they wrote off on that book. So there were no royalties.
Yep. And to kind of keep working, and I'm giving like little bullet points here, you know what I mean? But Kirby had a hand in creating a whole other genre when the superhero thing was taking a dive after World War II. He pretty much created romance comics to keep going.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Kirby kept going and kept trying to find things to do and stuff to keep working. So even if Marvel had gone out of business and stuff, I really think he would have found some way to keep working. Because him and Roz were a team, you know. I mean, the more you get into Kirby and the more you learned about things in his life, the more you knew he would have kept going.
I actually remember reading an interesting analysis about Kirby and Simon and Stan Lee, where the Kirby and Simon partnership, Joe Simon he was the one who took care of the business end a lot, and looked out for Jack. Of course, they were partners. And when Jack went to work at Marvel, someone was hypothesizing, and it looked like he kind of saw Stan in that role, and was kind of expecting him to sort of take care of Jack business-wise. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't Stan's role. You know, Stan was his boss. He wasn't Jack's partner. So Jack Kirby may have, like, this is just someone hypothesizing. So I just thought that was an interesting point of view, where maybe Jack did see Stan in that role a little bit more than he should have.
Gotcha. Yeah, man. Well, guys. Okay, guys. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up here if you want. And next Friday, I think we'll be here. You know, okay. Everybody's yawning and looking at stuff, man. So as usual, thanks for everybody that's out there writing these comments. I've had a good time with the comments tonight.
Yeah.
Guys.
We always get good comments here.
Love it. So if you watch this on the rewind, make sure you hit the live chat when it loads up. You can do it. I think we got one of the best comment sections. It's you can actually follow it too. It's not just like going and going.
Right.
They're talking about Texas snow and cheerleaders right now. Just saying.
All right.
Yeah. All right. All right, guys. Everybody be excellent to each other. Thanks for hanging out.
Bye.
Bye now.